They're not half-wits you're talking to. I mean, you sounded as if you were a fucking infant teacher. Yeah, I know you're setting aspirations. You're sounding like this sounds like every other thing, the notes you're giving. That sounds like every other kind of shit.
Nerdrotic.com.
Entertainment in general had a very rough weekend, and this is why this flew under the radar. And yes, I am aware there is only 30 user ratings, but Doctor Who managed to hit 0% on the Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Now, before I get started, and I do apologize for the spiel, but it is necessary. If you like what I do here, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the videos. It really does help a lot, and we rely on you guys now more than ever because YouTube is prioritizing giant corporations over independent content creators. I thank you for your continued support. We know with Rotten Tomatoes there's been a lot of skullduggery, or tomfoolery, whichever you prefer, with The Fall of Skywalker being stuck at 86%, a mathematical impossibility. We also have Birds of Prey, which failed fantabulously over the weekend, yet it still has an 81% audience score. We also had Terminator Derp Fate fail spectacularly, and it has a high audience score. So who knows what's going on? But this brings us to the 0% audience score for Doctor Who. If they reset it one more time, it might go into negative territory, and that's the problem. They have been resetting the score weekly at this point. I've lost count, and we will get into that. Now, we just need to talk about Rotten Tomatoes trying to protect things. We know they are basically marketing at this point, but what do you care about the BBC? You're owned by NBC Universal, unless you're all a bunch of cuddly corporations looking out for each other, trying to control a narrative. That wouldn't happen, would it? It's been a spectacular weekend of failure here in the States. We saw the Oscars go predictably woke and then predictably have their worst ratings in years. Big surprise. People don't want to watch professional adult pretenders award themselves and then tell us how to live our lives. And then we had the fantabulous failure of Birds of Prey, which fell prey to its own fake, woke, superficial marketing, so much so it had to change the title of the film to Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. It's why I'm not that surprised that not too many people noticed that Doctor Who hit 0 on the Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Now, some of you did, and you emailed me, and I appreciate that. And it's right in line with what's going on with fandom. People are just fed up, and unfortunately for Doctor Who, they're just walking away or have walked away. It's not like Star Wars, where there was some change, but that was because there was still enough fans to protest. That isn't the case with Doctor Who. And I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that what's going on with Doctor Who is a microcosm of what's going on with the BBC. They want to play to a very small portion of their audience, and they want the rest of them to pay for it. Life is full of choices, and unfortunately, the BBC made the wrong ones, but they refused to listen. They made the deliberate choice of turning the Doctor into a female and saddle her with a bunch of partisan, politically correct politics. We, the fans, who don't like this show and don't like the direction it's going, made the choice to voice our opinions. The people who are still around, that 20% I was talking about, made the choice of arguing with us and calling us ists and phobes. And the BBC made the choice to double down the following season. And now, more fans than ever are making the choice not to watch the show. The most recent episode had 3.81 million viewers. All the gains that this show made by its gimmick of turning the Doctor into a female have been erased. And do I think Doctor Who deserves to be at 0% or 7% or 8% or 16%? No. I think 20% is probably pretty fair, and that's where Series 11 has been sitting for the longest time. And we've seen the divide with The Witcher and The Joker and The Orville, and the whole point of this isn't the audience score. I doubt its accuracy for everything, but it does generally display the divide between the access media critics and the fans, and in turn, the creatives and the repurposers in Hollywood who are currently destroying some of our favorite franchises. The Ghostbusters 2016 marketing technique has been around since 2016, and it hasn't really worked now, has it? We had last year, of course, Dark Phoenix, which wasn't a woke movie. It wasn't filled with identity politics, but one single clip buried what was probably going to be a bad movie anyway, but would have had a better opening weekend. We saw what happened to Terminator Dark Fate. We saw what happened to Charlie's Angels. And now the most recent example is Birds of Prey. And I believe the next example will be James Bond, No Time to Die, but time will tell. In television, which I mainly cover here, Doctor Who has been the worst example of this. And I know there isn't a lot of Doctor Who fans left out there, but just imagine turning James Bond into a female. And on top of that, filling it full of this skewed, weird, superficial feminism that we've been seeing from the BBC and Hollywood, and filling it full of identity politics. Again, you can be political, but it's best to show both sides so you don't alienate half your audience. And as I've said time and time again, you can't choose your audience, but that's what the BBC and Hollywood want to do at this point. And they need to decide, are they platforms for influence or are they entertainment? And I'm talking specifically about scripted genre properties. And we know the answer to this question. They want to be platforms of influence because they believe that reaches the most people and we can get them young. What you're doing is boring the hell out of people, and the kids aren't watching. Kids aren't watching Star Trek. Kids are not watching Doctor Who. And Star Wars has suffered the same fate. They started losing their younger audience as well. And if this continues in another decade, these legacy franchises will be history. So you better start right now. While I was recording this video, they updated Rotten Tomatoes for Doctor Who Season 12 once again, and now it's back up to having over 1,300 user ratings and at 16%. Yet, in some places, people can't still see the score. So I'm not sure what's going on, and honestly, I don't really care that much. I just think it's a great example of a property being protected to protect its agenda, not the actual show. Of course, they're in bed together, and they all want each other to succeed, so they can push their agenda and make some cheddar on the side. Let's go to the most recent user ratings. Dennis M, 1.5 stars. There's been one really good episode this season, ironically, involving a better female doctor. The rest has been pretty cringeworthy. Doctor Who was one of the shows I always looked forward to. That's not the case anymore. DJA, 5 stars. Series 12 is so much better than Series 11. There's an arc this season, and I'm so intrigued as to what we're going to be uncovering by the end.
Whoever writes this is in the wrong business because, I mean, all over America, for example, where there's terrible insomnia. I mean, if I put these on good quality tape, and people who haven't had a kip since 1946 will be in a coma. In fact, you'd have to put them on prescription because some of them will put you into an irreversible coma.
FB, half star, which they don't really count. For those of you wondering, this show is what happens when you'd rather have soap opera writers than seasoned or even slightly experienced science fiction writers. KJF, half star. To the people who decide how the show should go, along with their accounting firm. I don't think it's an accounting firm, KJ. I think it's an extortion racket. I've entirely stopped buying your merch, pops, shirts, decor, gadgets, and will never buy season 11 and 12 on Blu-ray, despite owning every other season of Doctor Who available. To everyone else, sorry about the above. Vote with your wallet. First things first. I love Jodie. I don't, but we want to hear all voices here. As the Doctor, I felt the potential was great since she was announced as 13. It's a genuine shame she's got the role under Chibnall's misguidance. I truly believe Moffat, Davies, or any number of other competent writers and showrunners would have done her and the characters far better justice. I can somewhat agree with that, but we'll never know. The stories and direction all seem to me as doing little more than portraying Chibnall as jumping up and down, shouting, "Oh, look at me, I'm so very progressive and inclusive." It's completely ham-handed and sad after hanging on through Series 11 simply due to a misplaced sense of nostalgia. We have given up on watching Who a few episodes back. Judging by the reviews, I haven't been missing much, and that makes me sad. Jodie, try to hold out. With some luck, you'll get a better shot at being the Doctor under different management. She is locked at the hip with Chris Chibnall. She will be leaving with him, and I believe that will be after her 3rd season, and I believe that might possibly be a shortened season, but we will find out. There are rumors out there that we might not get Who until 2022, and that rhymed, and I didn't mean it to. Dan V, 1.5 stars. Mostly regretting purchasing this season. Rather than trying to make a good show, they are trying to make a point. And failing, indeed. Too bad they are taking down all the hard work that the previous seasons built. Can't see it lasting too much longer without a hard turnabout. And how many franchises can you apply that review to? Mike S, 0.5 star. Pathetic, boring scripts, no imagination. The musical score is not just bad, but annoying sounds like a 12-year-old on a Casio. Emma C, 0.5 star. Bad writing, boring and preachy. It's a shame they are ruining a great show. Brett E, 1 star. Oh my god, this show is horrible. I tried giving it another go after a weak season 11, but season 12 has taken the show to new lows I didn't know were possible. Pros: it's in 1080p. Cons: editing is disorienting with lightning fast cuts that give the viewer a sense of speed and excitement. Well, the reason they have to do that is because Jodie runs like a duck. Doesn't work, unfortunately. Acting from everyone is awful. Perhaps it's bad directing. Jodie Whittaker looks like a buffoon, and her physical gestures, e.g. the way she runs like a duck, squints, etc. The Doctor says "I don't know" several times an episode. Also, the Doctor spends way too much time explaining things in detail. Why not simplify things to "I do this clever thing" instead of trying to look extra clever by adding "I did A, B, C, etc." which leads to this clever thing because she has to look much smarter than her predecessors. Duh! The Doctor is always out of breath like she just ran a marathon. She also always has her mouth open. The Doctor keeps sending her companions away into danger to do her job. Maybe because she's out of breath. The companions constantly remind us they don't know what they're doing by spelling it out with phrases like "this is insert alien gizmo here," whatever that means, etc. There is an in-your-face preaching speech around every corner. There is no meaningful relationship built up between any of the companions or the Doctor. There is no underlying story or reason the companions are with the Doctor. They're just there. At the end of the day, there is nothing stimulating about this show. It's trying to force social messages down your throat with little to no story, instead of giving us an entertaining story with subtle social messages sprinkled in. That's what we have been saying for a long time, but of course, we get called ists or phobes. I don't blame the cast, and I don't mind the Doctor is female. I think the problem with the show is the writer and the director and the BBC.
It could have been a lot better. It could have been slightly better written.
They're not half-wit you're talking to. I mean, you sounded as if you were a fucking infant teacher. Yeah, I know you're setting aspirations. You're sounding like this sounds like every other thing the notes you're giving. That sounds like every other kind of shit.
I think this might be about it for Doctor Who, folks, and while it still may struggle along for a couple of more years, it has fallen off a cliff. 0%, and I don't care if it only had 30 votes, and I don't care if they reset it again. This is the oldest franchise out there. It's been around for decades. It's a professionally made show, and it hit 0%. The David Chappelle effect is still going on, but this stuff does not change overnight. More and more people are becoming aware and voicing their displeasure of what has been going on with our entertainment. In these hyper-divisive times, we have the repurposers openly choosing a side, destroying their own agenda. No matter what your agenda is, if you're obnoxious about it, people tend to get annoyed, and we're starting to see that in everything these days. So back the hell off a little bit and try to entertain everyone. I always think about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man that came out shortly after that infamous date in September, which I can't name out loud here on YouTube because of the algorithm. How ridiculous is that? That was a perfect example of entertainment healing. People just wanted to feel good and they just had a fun movie. Doctor Who should be that, can be that, but it won't be anymore thanks to Chris Chibnall. Well done. You don't get to pick your legacy. That's something I brought up with Game of Thrones. Dan and Dave will always be remembered as a couple of guys who destroyed the greatest show of all time, arguably. And now Chris Chibnall, Alex Kurtzman, Kathleen Kennedy, Rianne Johnson are all going to be remembered for screwing up franchises that better people created, kept alive for decades by fans from all sides who just wanted to come together and have a little fun, enjoy a little escapism. But we can't have that from the repurposers. We especially can't have fun, and that's been removed from Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars, and pretty much everything nowadays because they want to constantly remind us there's something wrong in the world, and it's somebody's fault. And that is the vapid, contrived shite that we are getting from the repurposers these days. And now they're paying the price, but ultimately we do. They'll move on to other jobs, and we'll be left with our favorite show in pieces. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, thanks for listening this long. I'll see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.
I hope that they're not family people. I find this a bit too sexy, really.